And welcome to Talking Footy. I'm Tim Watson. Tonight we have a cracker of a show for you. Joining us a little later, Peter Schwab, Peter Rode and Danny Frawley, three departing AFL coaches to talk about life after coaching and plenty of other things, and that will be fascinating viewing. I know a former premiership coach who would have been most unlikely to front the cameras when he lost a coaching job is, of course, our very own David Parkin. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Tim.
How have you enjoyed the last couple of weeks football, but a lot of Olympics as well?
Yeah, and both. I think the footy's been good because of the finish to the season. The Olympics have been just superb. I haven't had much sleep, I suggest, over the last fortnight.
Looking forward to the finals? I
am. I think we've got a genuine few contenders, and even those who are surviving at the bottom end of the eight, I think might make some inroads. Also tonight we've got a massive show, as I've just said. Also tonight, Mick Malthouse, the Magpie coach, is a final spectator this year, and going by today's newspapers, new Richmond coach Terry Wallace may not be on Mick Malthouse's Christmas card list. Even before he takes over the hot seat at Tigerland, Terry Wallace has questioned Mick Malthouse's coaching tactics. David, what did you make of that article this morning in the paper? Well, I was a bit surprised, I suppose, but it depends on whether he's talking as a commentator, and I guess that's what he'll claim. And I guess in that circumstance he can say what he likes, but it's a bit dubious when he's crossing the line. It's always this compromise, isn't it? When you're in the media and also in footy, pretty tough.
I think as soon as you're named as an AFL coach, you're going to be considered an AFL coach more than you're going to be considered an AFL commentator.
Well, I must admit, I took it from that direction, but I think probably Terry was doing it in the former. But when you've already got the label, I think that's a very dangerous precedent, I said. Plenty of news around in footy too, and joining us as he always does on Talking Footy is the best in the business, Craig Hutchison. Welcome, Hutchie.
Tim, David, how are you going tonight?
Well, thanks, Hutchie.
Hutchie, we'll start with Richmond because they had a coaching purge at the weekend. Today they've started a player purge.
Certainly have. 6 sackings expected at Richmond by this time tomorrow night. They've started that process today. Justin Blumfield was let go today, the former Essendon premiership player, after 2 years at Tigerland. He would be the biggest name. I would suspect, we believe that Fletcher, Marsh, Nichols and Houlihan are among the 6 to follow suit by this time tomorrow. So he's wasted no time, Terry Wallace, has he? Even though Greg Miller's delivering the news to these players and will continue to do so tomorrow. All the coaches now are gone, basically, bar none. Brian Royal, we believe tonight, has been appointed or will be appointed tomorrow to up to a 4-year deal to be the assistant. So the key...
He's worked together with Terry Wallace before?
He was. He was Terry Wallace's assistant at the Bulldogs. Then
was he sacked by Terry?
No, he moved on to Melbourne, took an opportunity at Melbourne to further develop himself. But I think Brian Royal would think that he's missed the boat as a senior coach, so the long-term security at Richmond would be handy. And it's a good coup. I know the Kangaroos were very keen to keep him, so he will be Terry Wallace's right-hand man at Richmond. And the list is changing quickly. The football department's basically been gutted, so it's wasted no time putting his stamp on.
Surprised he didn't keep at least one coach. I thought they might have kept some of the ongoing information which they've gathered over the last couple of years. I'm surprised that one didn't stay.
Well, David Whedon, who has a different type of role, he'll stay and probably be reshuffled in the process to a more senior role.
When will he address the players for the first time?
I think some of them tomorrow. Yeah, some of them tomorrow. Certainly Rodney Eade will do the same tomorrow with the Bulldogs. He'll speak to them. But Terry Wallace is going hard before he starts officially on October 1, and they're putting their own stamp on Richmond.
One of the mysteries that still remains in football is who will coach the Hawthorn Football Club. Now, they've interviewed at least half a dozen rookie-type coaches. Are they about to announce their senior coach this week sometime?
Not yet, no. They'll meet formally tomorrow to establish a bit of a quasi-shortlist, I suspect. I believe the coach will be a rookie coach, a first-time coach.
Who's impressed him so far?
And I think it'll come from Sean Wren, John Longmire, Alistair Clarkson, and obviously Donald McDonald will be very heavily favoured, given he has the inside running and he's there already. But it'll take some courage to put a rookie in, given the political climate they've got there and the challenge that's coming. Don Scott's ticket will be launched by the weekend, so but it's already been launched. But the 100 signatures, he was collecting them at Box Hill on Sunday, so he's up and going with the signature chase, and that will be a tough one to sell, a rookie coach, but that's the way I think they'll go.
Sorry, Hutchie, that means that Gary Ayres is not in the equation as far as you're concerned?
I wouldn't rule him out yet. He's got some strong support from some board members, but I think the subcommittee is leaning towards a new, fresh approach at Hawthorn and take the club forward for 3 to 5 years.
You're pretty good with this sort of information. Who are you leaning towards?
No, I wouldn't like to split the 4. I think they've all got great qualities. I think that Donald McDonald, being there already, will have a little bit of an advantage, but the other 3 are all interstate: Wren, Longmire and Clarkson, and I think that who impresses most in the second round talks.
Who's made the best presentation, do you believe, so far?
I think they've all been outstanding. Sean Wren's performance at Adelaide and Hawthorn was fantastic in his presentation. Longmire didn't actually present. He just spent 2 hours with them discussing philosophies, and indeed he's yet to actually commit, but he would be an outstanding choice. And Clarkson knocked their socks off last Tuesday, and he was coming from a fair way back in a perception-wise, so I think they've all done a really good job.
David, have you got a feel for this?
No, I don't. I'll be delighted if they have the courage to actually go down the road of a rookie coach. I think it'd be an easy way out to select Gary Ayres, Tim, but I'm still leaning in Gary Ayres' favour, but I take on board what you're saying.
They want someone for the next 3 to 5 years to develop their young list and get a lot of young players in the draft. They'll go heavy in the draft with young players.
What happened to the little back pocket player who's doing so well with Box Hill at the moment?
Who's that?
The one who's up for... he went in for an interview, and I don't know whether it actually happened or not.
Oh, Andrew Collins?
Andrew Collins.
OK, now I'm following it. I'm not sure that interview even went ahead in the end. I have no real reading on that, but I know that he would...
You know something, Dave?
Be unlikely to be shortlisted.
Well, no, I heard that he was going for an interview. It didn't actually happen, so I was wondering what the story. I thought you'd have the story behind.
No, I think he was keen to. I think he was keen to be interviewed and had an appointment last Wednesday. I'm not sure if it went ahead or not, but I know they were honest with him and said you're coming from a fair way back, and I don't know how that went down.
So just to wrap this up, we're expecting an announcement later this week.
I would think probably Monday or Tuesday. Now, they'll probably have a preferred candidate by Friday.
OK. And Melbourne, I mean, they've got a big final this weekend against Essendon. Bad news for them at the Tribunal tonight?
Yes, they've lost Chris Heffernan for a week. They pleaded guilty to this charge. There we go, 1 week Chris Heffernan tonight. So probably a good decision in the end to plead guilty. They give him a chance to play the week after. Goodwin got 1 week earlier, obviously, not involved. Here's the Heffernan incident, and that's highlighted by our 7 News staff, and it was caught on the day by the umpire, which didn't help him, and the video was conclusive enough for him to plead guilty, so he'll be out of the Melbourne side this weekend. And he's one of those.
Hurt him. He's been in good form too.
He's one of those probably 15 to 30 list players who'll be fighting for a spot, so it'll be tough for him to get back. Let's hope he does against his old side. Interestingly, their jumpers clash. Now, this is an interesting one.
Who's won this battle?
Well, Melbourne aren't changing. Now, the last 2 times they played Essendon, they've worn their away strip out of the goodness of their heart, and the fact that they have one and Essendon don't, and they've been their away team. Now, the AFL subtly asked them what they thought. They said, no way, we're wearing the home jumper, and it's not our problem. And the AFL said, fair enough, and Essendon will be wearing theirs too. So there'll be a clash of jumpers on Saturday in a final. Before I get your opinion on that, David, Paul Gardner, the chairman, told us why tonight.
No, we're not changing the jumper. We've played in red and blue for a long time. We're going to stay with red and blue. It's our heart, it's our heritage, it's our home game. We're ready to go. Bring on the Bombers.
There you go. What do you think in a final to have 2 clubs who historically clash jumpers?
I think this is the time when the league has to step in, because it is, I reckon it's the worst clash in terms of competition, and somebody has to, an unbiased view has got to step aside and say, look, for the good of the game, those who are watching, those who are commentating, should be done.
Just on the Bombers before we move on, Tim, Mark McCurry, I wouldn't mind betting his last game if he plays this weekend. Probably doubtful that he will, but the Bombers are negotiating behind the scenes a farewell to Mark McCurry in terms of his contract. I don't believe... He's got a contract next year, so we can hold him to that, but I think that they'll negotiate a payout. That's the mail.
He's struggled, Tim, hasn't he?
He has. He's struggled for the last 12 months, and I think they've given him plenty of opportunities this year to show whether or not he's still capable of playing like the Mark McCurry of old, but he just hasn't been able to produce.
Well, even Mick and I, so they even put him down back for a farewell. If you can't last there, you're probably gone.
Only 30, so let's hope someone else gives him a chance.
Dave, you actually mentioned Mick Malthouse. He's just sitting there waiting to be introduced. Mick Malthouse, of course, won't be participating in the finals this year with Collingwood the last 2 years. They've made it to the grand final, unfortunately, for Mick and for the Collingwood faithful. And for all the players there, they have missed the finals this year, but he joins us on Talking Footy. G'day, Mick.
Thanks, Tim.
You're looking nice and relaxed.
Oh, yeah, well, I suppose I am, but I guess when the last game comes and goes, you tend to have a look at it and think, are you in the finals? If you're not, then all things, you just back off a little bit and recharge again, because we've got player interviews and we've got the draft coming up, and we've got trade week, and you've got the camp up in Canberra and so forth. So there's a fair bit of action before we can... and we start training in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the horrible thing about it.
You're glad you're not, though, Mick, in the sense of where the team was, if you'd snuck in rather than finishing out?
I don't know whether you actually fluke getting into the 8. You certainly don't fluke getting to the top 4. We haven't had a good enough season to even warrant it. Now, had we got in with the current list, we would have been exposed with inexperienced players. And I've always said that your best side goes down the race, but sometimes the inexperience can get you. So I reckon the game that we played just last week against Carlton was probably if you took that one over the full season. We got close a couple of times. We got in front. We dropped behind. We lost Josh Fraser during it. We brought him back and tried to get him over the line to help our ruck division because we were already short of tools. And we lost by a point. And that really summed up our year. We were good, we were poor. We never really got... I suppose we got a couple of hidings early, but we got back over that when we got our list back together again. And just generally, just like that, I guess the difference between last year and this year may have been just that 5% that got you over the line. As opposed to losing by a point, we won by 5 points. If Melbourne beat us by 9 points, we would have got over the line last year. So I think we just go back, recharge, have a look at our list. 10 of the young kids we played this year, I think there's only about 4 available for the last game. So there's, we just got hit at the wrong time with the wrong kids getting injured, and we would have liked to have played them a lot more in preparation for next year. So I think we're at a list that will challenge next year. I'm not talking premierships. I'm certainly talking 8. It's a matter of keeping them on the ground. We've seen with other sides that have tended to struggle. You have a look, even Brisbane when they lost those 2 games in a row, Brown wasn't there. So you take away great players, and the best sides struggle.
I might be saying the wrong thing, but I talked to you pre-season, and you made some, I thought, very objective statements to me about we might. You won't remember, but we might have to go back to go forward. Is that unfair to say that now publicly? The criticism that maybe is levelled at you, that there's been a few protective devices in relation to you and criticism, but you were very adamant to me at the start of the year that your best 4 players, your oldest 4, probably wouldn't be able to maintain their performance profile. That's actually happened. The 5 blokes that you selected who you thought would become A-graders, 1, and Fraser was about to, coming 2. The other 3 were still C-graders. You made a very open prediction to me. I'm sorry to be bringing it out publicly, but that's what you said, and it actually panned out that way. People don't realise that coaches actually know what's going on.
Yeah, you get a feel. There's no question having 2 cracks at it against reportedly the best side going around the last 30, 40 years, we were pretty good. I mean, let's face facts. We were a side that may not have been as good, number 2 in the league as far as personnel goes, but we were pretty good. We got held together by a very good leadership group. We had a lot of goers. We had players that played their role. They may not have, as it turned out, no one was interested in 2 years of our players even looking at being traded and so forth. So I thought we had a group that played their role very well. And that sometimes is a ringing out process. You really get the absolute maximum out of your squad. They've got nothing left. We got back, the previous year we had 1 month before Christmas of training, and as it turned out, it wasn't too bad. And we thought, really, have we gone overboard with this long pre-Christmas training program? Well, the answer is no now, because on our second hit at it, going 2 years and only having limited period off, the players really just couldn't cope with it. They had soft tissue injuries. Nathan, Scott Burns, Shane Wakeland, Anthony in many respects, our older, more mature players, they just gave their all, and they sort of plateaued out a little bit. Of course, Nathan then did his hamstring with 7 or 8 weeks. And as a consequence, it loaded up other players, and those players were absorbing already almost about 80, 90, or say 90 to 100% of their own capacity. So where do they draw the next 10%? Well, they needed some young players to draw that up. We played Davison, looked okay for a quarter, did his knee. We played Richards in the ruck to support Josh Fraser, osteitis pubis. Cameron Cloak to support Anthony, who never really got over his ankle problems, a dislocated shoulder. So we just always... And those things, you don't predict the injuries, but you just know that the senior players, they're already at saturation point. They need a great deal of support coming up, and that support, unfortunately, really, it's good enough, but we couldn't get it on the ground.
The conjecture surrounding Reece Shaw was quick, and was back page news today in Melbourne. What did you make of that?
Well, I picked up the paper and read the back page, which listed all the Olympians, and flipped over the paper and had to double check to think, now we're entering in September with 8 sides that are out of it and 8 sides that are in it. I would have thought it must be a very, very poor news day not to have one of those sides at least mention that there's a final series coming up. And it took me back a little bit when I read who it was by, who made the comments. So, like David said...
You're referring to Terry Wallace there and his comments?
Yeah, but Terry's got a bit of a history about saying things. You know, he said a lot of things about Richmond and Danny during the year, and you know, said that he wasn't interested in the job, and did leave Footscray because they weren't going anywhere because their list wasn't that great and this sort of stuff. So, and wanted to go to Sydney, and you know, there's a few things that have taken place. You know, the river's pretty wide, and the bridge is slowly getting over there. So there's a lot of I look at that and I read it with interest about Terry, see where he's coming from.
For those people who are watching who may not know what we're actually talking about, I mean, in the paper this morning it's been mentioned that Terry Wallace felt that it was embarrassing for you to put Rhys Shaw back on for that final minute against Carlton on Friday night. Now, I mean, do you think Rhys Shaw was embarrassed about going back for a minute?
No. One of the things, when you're 8 wins in the side that you're playing is 9 wins, and we've got a chance to draw level with them, and in fact go in front of them.
Was the game still in the balance when he went back on the ground? Could you still won the game?
We lost by
a point. Yeah.
One would suspect that the game was...
You still could have won the game at that stage when he went back on.
If you lose the game by a point, there's a fair chance you've got a chance of
I mean, the suggestion is that the game was over, though. Yeah.
No, the game was there.
The game wasn't over.
No, the game wasn't over, no.
But can you accept that it was his role as a media commentator, though? Like some people cross the line. Sometimes you write columns for the Australian, you have to call it as you see it. Is he entitled to do that?
Well, if I really wanted to call it the way I saw it, I think the Australian are fully appreciative of the fact that I do coach a football side. I'm not going to put the boots into anyone, and I'm going to be quite broad in my assessment of things as opposed to, you know, I've got no interest in bringing people down or that sort of stuff. So I don't know where Terry comes from. I quite often, I wondered as a player, and I've wondered as a coach, and I've wondered as a coach against him sometimes where he comes from. But I've got nothing against Terry Wallace, and his comments. If he's making him as a Richmond coach, then, which he is, a Richmond coach, then I suppose, well, he's entitled to his view, but I don't know whether he actually expressed that in the newspapers, do you?
Well, he said it on the radio, not in the newspaper.
Oh, well, wherever it's... Oh, that's probably Mike Sheen picking it up, isn't it, and running with that?
I think Mike might have written the article. Yeah.
Oh, right, OK. Well, that explains a lot, doesn't it, really?
We'll talk about Mike Sheen when we come back, because we do need to take a break. Now, Hutchie, we need to say goodbye to you. You've got to get out on the road and find out who this coach of the Hawthorn football is going to be.
Me.
We'll find out after the break.
It'll come, don't worry.
Thanks for your help and your work again tonight, Craig Hutchison. We need to take a break. Up next, Peter Schwab, Danny Frawley and Peter Rode join us. That's all to look forward to on Talking Footy. Peter Rode at Telstra Dome on Sunday, coming down after coaching his last game, and there's Danny Frawley on Saturday, the day before, at the MCG, also making the trip down from the coach's box back down to the ground for the very last time and into the rooms to address the players who stayed out in the ground for a while just to say goodbye to the crowd, and Danny there with his wife Anita and family, and they join us now, Danny Frawley, Peter Schwab and also Peter Rode. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Tim.
Just, I'll ask you the first question, Danny. Just what was going through your mind as you were coming down there from the coach's box for the last time?
Probably 21 rounds ago against the Pies, it was a completely different feeling, Tim. I tell you, it was just one of probably contemplation and probably disappointment for the whole club. You know, support staff are really hurting as well. A lot of players hurting. The club's hurting, so the sooner they get into the future, and it looks like it's happening that way, what I've heard today, the better it will be for the club.
I guess you would have heard the players that Craig Hutchison spoke about before that have been told today that they've no longer got a future at the Richmond Football Club. Has that surprised you in any way that the club have acted so quickly and swiftly?
Oh, look, it's disappointing. My hands are tied on that. I'll obviously give those guys a ring over the next couple of days. It's obviously been Greg and Terry's initiative, and as I said, that's the road they're going to take, and disappointing for those boys.
And your staff as well, Dan?
Yeah, look, that's been really disappointing, David.
Did you think you might stay with one of them maybe for continuous and ongoing information about the playing group?
It's a cutthroat business. Football.
I understand that, but would have you thought that one might have stayed amongst that?
No,
not particular one, but anyone?
Thought maybe one could have stayed, but that's the way it goes.
Schwabby, you've been out of the business for a while now. You look nice and relaxed.
Yeah.
How have you been spending your time since you departed from Hawthorn?
Oh, very quietly, speaking to a few people, just catching up with friends and family, and walking the kids to school and walking the dog and improving my golf. Yeah. I love the Olympics.
Yeah.
I was an expert in the end. I was watching everything.
You're looking more relaxed than the last time I saw you, particularly the last time you came here into Talking Footy.
Yeah, I got no regrets sitting here.
And Peter, you made that same journey as Danny down for the last time of the week. How did it feel for you?
Yeah.
Sorry, just before you answer that, I just watching some of your young players, particularly on Sunday, and Adam Cooney, and I mean, there's no doubt that he's going to develop into a fine player. There must have been a hint of sadness to think, gee, I'm not going to actually see these kids develop the way that I think they're going to develop. I'm not going to be part of that.
Yeah, I think it's hit home over the last couple of weeks, you know, especially Adam Cooney's form, but also, you know, quite a few of the other younger guys.